Welcome to the Drowsy Scientist, a place where time slows, where the mind is free to drift, and science becomes a gentle current that rocks you towards sleep. Tonight, you are not flying outward into the stars, but floating inward, backward, to the beginning. Not the beginning of your life, but the beginning of all life, on a planet that has not yet taken its first breath. Picture the Earth, suspended in space, not as you know it now, but as it was 4 billion years ago, young, glowing, restless. From afar, it is wrapped in storm and stone, spinning slowly through a black sky filled with stars. There are no trees or rivers, no birds or insects, not even silence in the way we know it. Only a stillness that holds everything in waiting. You move closer, slowly, like mist descending toward the sea. The surface of this early Earth is alive with fire. Volcanoes erupt, mountains crack and melt, and the air is thick with strange gases. Methane, ammonia, hydrogen, carbon dioxide. There is no oxygen here yet, no blue sky. The sun shines dimmer than it does now, filtered through clouds, heavy with dust and ash. Lightning forks through the skies, illuminating the clouds in brief, electric pulses. Beneath it all, the oceans have begun to form, dark and hot, and filled with minerals, a churning, chemical cradle. You drift gently above the waves. These are not the familiar oceans of today. They are thick with heat, alive with energy, and yet utterly lifeless. But in that lifelessness, something waits. The waters swirl with particles, atoms floating freely. Carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, the same ingredients that now build your body. You watch as they move, collide, drift apart, touch again. Sometimes they bond for a moment, sometimes they don't. There is no plan, no mind behind these interactions, only the simple rules of chemistry and the endless passage of time. But time, here, is generous. It allows for endless repetition. Lightning strikes the surface again and again, injecting energy into the mixture. And deep beneath the waves, hydrothermal vents breathe hot, mineral-rich fluids into the surrounding ocean. Underwater chimneys, built from the bones of the earth. You drift downward toward one of these vents, where the water is dark, but warm, a place of contrast. Cold ocean and hot breath, pressure and motion, silence and spark. Here, chemical reactions take on new speed. Minerals form tiny cavities in the stone, like miniature rooms. And in those rooms, molecules gather. Some react, some fall apart, some form chains. A molecule forms, then another, and another. These are no longer just atoms. They are beginning to behave, to hold on to energy, to guide reactions, to repeat themselves. They do not yet live, but they are no longer just passive pieces. The ocean becomes a soup of potential, of patterns trying to form. In sunlit tide pools near the shore, water evaporates in the heat of day, concentrating the ingredients left behind. Fatty molecules arrange themselves into bubbles, thin films that close around pockets of liquid. These bubbles float, break, and reform, some capturing other molecules inside. Now there is an inside and an outside. Now there are boundaries, even if only fragile ones. Inside some of these primitive spheres, the molecules continue their quiet work. Reactions unfold, slowly, again and again. Patterns are remembered, not perfectly, not consciously, but enough. Some combinations are lost to time, but others remain. Those that remain begin to do something subtle, something extraordinary. They cycle, they create a rhythm. A molecule makes another like itself, and that one makes another. You float there, watching, still unseen, a witness to the first whispers of what might one day be called life. It is not life yet, not truly. There is no breathing, no hunger, No reproduction in the sense we know, but there is direction. There is structure. There is persistence. You rise again, slowly, back above the surface of the water. You see the vast planet below, still violent, still steaming, but full of hidden motion. Every drop of water now holds potential. Every lightning strike, every mineral plume, every tide pool is a new chance for something to form, something to stay, something to change. Nothing is guaranteed. This is not destiny, but possibility, and yet, somehow, over time, possibility becomes pattern. Pattern becomes persistence. Persistence becomes memory, and memory becomes the seed of life. You take a deep breath, feeling how ancient the air in your lungs truly is. The oxygen you breathe was not there in those first moments, but the hydrogen, the carbon they have waited, they have witnessed. You are made from those same particles, arranged and rearranged a million times over, passed through stars, through oceans, through stone. Your blood carries the salt of that first sea. Your body remembers, in its very atoms, that beginning, as you rest now, warm and still. Imagine floating not just through time, but through the possibility of life itself, life before it had a name, a form, a voice. It began here, slowly, patiently, in the gentle rocking of molecules within oceans that never slept. Nothing moved quickly. There was no rush. The silence was vast, but full, and in that silence, something began to stir. Not with intention, not yet, but with direction, with a leaning toward action. And now, as your thoughts soften, you begin to wonder, how do these tiny, quiet molecules begin to dance? How do they begin to behave, not just float, but fold, build, and respond? What is the moment when matter begins to reach, to connect, to remember, to change? Now the earth exhales, slowly and silently, wrapped in warm ocean breath and volcanic heat, and you float just above the surface, where the steam from deep time curls like fingers of mist across the skin of a still world. You are hovering within a moment that stretches, not seconds or hours, but millennia upon millennia of waiting and becoming, and beneath you, the ocean simmers with invisible potential. There is no life here, not yet, but the ingredients are gathering like letters before a song is written. Like pigments before a painting is born, you drift downward, through layers of moist air and sun-warmed vapor, and let yourself sink gently into the water, water that holds, suspended in its embrace, tiny bits of the universe's language, atoms. They are so small you cannot see them, but you feel them, a humming presence all around you. Hydrogen, the simplest of them all, dancing with the lightness of starlight. Carbon with its hunger for connections. Nitrogen, curious and quick. On it drifts, spins, and sometimes only. Sometimes they meet. When they do, they hold hands, briefly or tightly, depending on their nature. And in these delicate bonds, something begins to form. Two hydrogens and an oxygen make a water molecule. You already know this, but now imagine thousands, millions of such combinations. Not just water, but new forms. Methane, ammonia, formaldehyd, hydrogen cyanide. Not beautiful in name, but beautiful in function. These are the whispers of future forms. You float through the soup of these earliest molecules, and it feels like wandering through an orchestra warming up before the symphony begins. Random notes, quiet patterns, the occasional harmony. Nothing yet makes sense. And yet everything is poised to do so. The energy for this great molecular dance comes from many places. Above, the sun casts its pale light, not as strong as today's sun, but still powerful enough to break bonds and rearrange them. Lightning, sudden and bright, forks through the sky and down into the sea, sending bursts of energy into waiting molecules. And deep below, Earth's warm breath continues to rise from its molten heart, feeding the ocean with heat and metals through hydrothermal vents. These vents are more than chimneys. They are laboratories. Their walls are coated with minerals like iron and sulfur. And these minerals act like silent midwives, helping molecules come together, coaxing bonds to form, offering scaffolding for complexity to begin. You imagine these tiny molecules settling onto a mineral surface, absorbing the heat and reacting, joining hands in new ways, forming chains, loops, spirals. And sometimes they fall apart, but sometimes they stay. The ocean, this giant, slow cauldron, holds space for the experiment to repeat again and again. This is chemistry. Yes, but it is also a kind of memory, not in thought, but in action. A molecule that holds its shape longer than others may meet another and become something more. Then that pair might bind with a third. Bit by bit, a shape takes form, and some of these shapes are not static. Some begin to help the reactions happen. They act like gentle tools guiding, speeding up, encouraging. Catalysts. You float beside one now, a simple molecule, but with a twist it can help other molecules come together. That is the first magic of alchemy. That matter can help matter change. You drift deeper into the ocean's layers, where the water cools slightly, and the energy comes more from within the earth than from above. In this gentle twilight, molecules form that can copy parts of themselves. Not life yet, not even close, but something stirring. A loop of atoms that attracts its mirror image, a strand that can pair with another, a whisper of replication, and replication, even imperfect replication, is a doorway. Because when something copies itself, it allows memory to stretch across time. Not memory like yours, not the scent of rain or the warmth of a voice, but chemical memory, structural memory, the ability to hold on to a shape, a function, a purpose. You imagine these first molecules forming chains of information, not words, but sequences, like beads on a string. Each position matters. Some strings fold, twist, curl into pockets and helices. Some do nothing and dissolve. But some hold, they last. They replicate. They invite interaction. You might think of them as scripts, silent ones, for now, but with the potential to be read. Every molecule, every bond, every fold is shaped by the subtle push and pull of physics, attraction, repulsion, electric charge. But it is also shaped by randomness. A molecule bumps into another not because it must, but because it happens to. And yet, through all this chance, patterns start to emerge. You are witnessing not the invention of life, but the invention of possibility. And now, float again to the surface, where droplets rise into the air and fall back as rain, and pools form along the rocky shores. These pools dry under the young sun, then fill again. In this rhythm, molécules concentrate reorganize, dry into films, rehydrate into soup again. Repetition, condensation, evaporation, concentration. Every cycle, a chance to try again. This is the chemistry of patience, the alchemy of repetition. And now, some molecules are doing more than just forming. They're reacting with light, absorbing photons, and transforming them into heat or movement. That movement, however tiny, begins to shape what comes next. Some molecules make other reactions easier. Some protect themselves better. Some linger longer in the warmth of a bubble or the crevice of a vent. And you begin to see that chemistry alone isn't random anymore. It's guided, softly, subtly, by which patterns hold, which shapes persist, which structures respond to the environment around them. You float back into the deep, back into the dark blue where heat rises gently and mineral walls shimmer with complex shapes. Inside a small crevice, A handful of molecules form a closed loop, a cycle. One product becomes the ingredient for the next, which then feeds into another, and back again. It is not alive. Not yet, but it does something rare. It continues. It sustains itself so long as the conditions allow, and so the question arises in you like a whisper: when does reaction become metabolism? When does motion become behavior? When do these simple things begin to carry a hunger, however small? You feel the edges of that next question brushing against your thoughts. The idea that molecules might not only react but consume, take in, transform. The release begins to form in you. You are almost ready to follow it, to go deeper, to lean into the warmth of the ocean's hidden chambers and ask, what happens when the molecules that dance begin to knead? The sky above you thickens, not with the soft cotton of modern clouds, but with veils of ashen gas that move like breath held too long. Tense and brimming, you float again over the young earth, a world still humming with heat, where continents are nothing more than scattered rock, and the oceans are deep, dark cradles of chemical longing. There is no sun shining through clearly now, only a dim light trying to pierce through a sky swollen with storm. The atmosphere groans, heavy with unspent tension, and the winds begin to move in wide, slow spirals. You sense something approaching, a gathering of forces unseen, a moment before the crack. Then, suddenly, it begins. Lightning. A jagged silver ribbon slashes across the clouds, silent at first from where you drift, but powerful, a thin channel of pure energy leaping through the thick sky. Searching, reaching, a heartbeat later, thunder answers a low, rolling sound that seems to shake the very fabric of the air. Another bolt follows, brighter than the first, and then another, and another, until the heavens above the young ocean shimmer with constant fire. You are suspended in this symphony of charge, feeling the invisible currents in the air, the static that fills the space between sea and sky. Each lightning strike is not just light, not just heat. It is a spark of transformation. It tears molecules apart, shatters stable bonds, and in doing so, leaves fragments behind atoms, ions, radicals desperate and reactive, and when the pieces settle again, they do not always return to what they were. Sometimes, they form something new. You float gently downward, into the thick, warm waters that have been struck, the surface still steaming from the heat of the strike. The molecules here are dizzy with energy. They swirl faster, and in these collisions, new shapes emerge. Hydrogen cyanide, formaldehyde, simple sugars, amino acids. They do not look like life, not yet, but they are the seeds of its chemistry. Think of them as notes, not yet a melody, but the beginnings of a scale, each one a sound that could be built into something more. The lightning gives them what they need: energy to rearrange, to leap past barriers, to twist into shapes they could not otherwise reach. Energy, in this world, is not just force, it is permission. Permission for atoms to take on new forms, to dance new dances, to begin stories they would never dare whisper in the cold. You imagine one particular amino acid forming now, perhaps glycine, the simplest of them, two molecules, each born from earlier sparks, meet in the water's warmth, guided by motion and charge, and with a soft click, they bind. This bond does not mean much on its own, but it is something that holds, something that stays long enough to be joined by another in another moment, elsewhere in the sea. A different pair of molecules meet two fatty acids, perhaps, and form a tiny film, a bubble, a boundary, and in the space between these tiny moments, lightning cracks again. You watch as another strike reaches the surface of a shallow pool, and for just a blink, the water glows not with light, but with possibility. New molecules form that can link, others that can loop, and some that can catalyze. It is chemistry. Still random. Blind, but the randomness is thick now. With direction, you think of the spark not as a cause, but as an invitation for complexity to try again and again, until something extraordinary happens. Over many days and nights, storms come and go. The sky clears, then clogs, then bursts again with energy. And each time, the sea absorbs the change. The molecules created are not immediately useful. Most will break apart, drift away, dissolve, but some linger, and those that linger become part of the slow accumulation, the gathering of possibility. You float through a tide pool now where the water is shallow and warm, where sunlight touches the edge of what lightning began. Here, evaporation concentrates the molecules. They press together, not by will, but by proximity. The heat encourages bonds. The drying cycles encourage repetition. And slowly, one kind of molecule meets another, a sugar and a base, a phosphate, and together they form a backbone, a thread, a strand, not DNA yet, but something like it. You hover near this fragile thread, suspended in the soup of new creation, and watch as it wobbles in the water, absorbing the light from above, the warmth from below, the echoes of storms long past. It is not alive. It cannot move on its own, or think, or replicate without help. But it is a step closer to becoming something that can. Somewhere far below you, another lightning bolt finds the ocean. In that flash, a simple ring molecule is born, one that, years from now, will become part of a coenzyme, a helper of life's early machinery. You see none of the future from here. You only feel the slow thickening of potential. The ocean holds its breath, and with each strike, that breath deepens. You remember now how the alchemy of simple things, the forming of molecules through slow cycles and subtle energies, needed just one more element to stir it forward. And that element is energy. But not just any energy. It must arrive at the right time, in the right place, in just the right amount. Too much, and the molecules fall apart. Too little, and nothing moves. Lightning walks this edge perfectly. Each bolt is a wild coin toss, but it plays by ancient rules. And so, over centuries, then millennia, then more, these random sparks add up. They become chapters in a quiet, unfinished book. Pages filled with molecules that might one day fold, react, sustain. Remember, you let yourself drift higher now, up from the ocean's surface, above the churning clouds, and look down again on the world below. It is still restless, still untamed, but you sense something deeper in its motion, not just fire and water and gas. But, direction. As if the planet is beginning to hum with a question. What can these molecules do? Now that they have formed, you feel that question stirring in the air, in the water, in the minerals, and you feel it stirring gently inside yourself too. Because now, some molecules are not just things they can do. They can hold energy. They can move it. They can pass it along. The spark was only the beginning. The fire it lit is slow and quiet and chemical, but it grows. And somewhere in that growing heat, in a bubble or pool or vent, unseen, a molecule will soon do more than just exist. It will react in a way that continues. It will act like a system. It will start to cycle, and maybe, just maybe, it will begin to feed. The storm has passed now. The sky softens, and a hush settles over the land like a slow exhale after centuries of lightning and fire. You drift gently over the surface of this quiet earth, no longer shaken by thunder, no longer boiling at every seam, but resting, steaming softly in the sun, as if dreaming. Below, in low-lying places where rainwater has collected, and volcanic heat rises through the crust, Shallow pools form pools that shimmer in the light, warmed not by sunlight alone, but by the breath of the earth itself. These are not oceans, not vast or deep, but small, scattered basins, puddles in stone, cracks in clay, cradles of water, where molecules gather and are held close. You hover above one now, letting yourself lower toward its surface. And as you do, you feel the change in rhythm. Here, the water is not just water. It is thick with the leftovers of storms and vents and time, a gentle mix of sugars, amino acids, fatty molecules, and strands that try to copy themselves. It is quiet, but never still. The heat rises gently from below, and the water evaporates, then returns again with each new rainfall. The cycles begin wet and dry, warm and cool, and in those rhythms, the molecules begin their slow experiment. You watch droplets form along the edges of the pool, little beads trapped between grains of clay, and inside each droplet, a world begins. Some molecules are surrounded by others that protect them, shield them, even help them stay together. Fatty acids, simple and elegant, float freely until they form thin films, tiny membranes, flexible and curved, like bubbles stretched around invisible breath. These films close around droplets of water, and inside them, the chemistry continues. You imagine one of these bubbles now, floating lazily near the edge of the pool. Its membrane is delicate, yet complete. Inside, a handful of molecules twist and move. Perhaps some react, perhaps some merely rest, but they are not alone. They are together, protected, enclosed, a world inside a world. You might think of it as a shell, a pocket, a first skin. Not life, not yet, but something closer, something that can grow, can split, and contain reactions without losing them to the sea. The pool holds thousands of these bubbles, rising and falling with the surface tension of the water, like dreams in the half-light. Each one is slightly different, a different shape, a different set of contents, a different potential. Some will burst in minutes, others will hold on longer. And in a few, something subtle begins to shift. Inside, certain molecules begin to behave not just as passengers, but as participants. One catalyzes a reaction, speeds it up, makes it easier. Another copies a portion of itself, imperfectly, but consistently. A third holds energy in its bonds, a spark from the sun or the earth, and shares it in just the right moment. You float closer to such a bubble, one small enough to escape the eye, but large enough to carry a purpose. Its membrane is not solid, but selective, letting in water, letting out waste, holding close what it needs. Inside, a cycle begins, not imposed, but emerging, molecules that feed each other in turn, each step creating the next. This is not yet metabolism, but it is the scent of it, a kind of chemical rhythm, a soft, circular breath, and the bubble itself responds to the world around it. When the heat rises, it stretches. When the water recedes, it clings to rock. When another bubble comes close, sometimes they fuse, and the contents mix, new combinations, new chances. You sense it now, hovering just above the surface. The difference between randomness and response, between noise and signal. Some of these tiny compartments begin to act as if they want to stay, as if they want to continue. They do not want, not yet, but you feel the stirrings of persistence, the earliest shadows of desire, and all around them, the dreaming pools hold space for this transformation. The edges of clay and mineral provide scaffolding, a surface on which molecules can concentrate, assemble, break, and reassemble. The drying cycles allow time for reactions to complete. The rehydration brings new molecules into the mix. It is a dance choreographed by heat and water, with no audience, no director, only chemistry, only chance, only time. And yet, from this randomness, Patterns emerge. You drift across the surface of the pool, noticing how some of the bubbles begin to change more rapidly than others. Inside a few, molecules begin to cooperate. A strand that folds into a useful shape, a membrane that captures nutrients, a sequence of reactions that feeds back on itself. These are not thoughts, not choices, but they are steps. Steps towards systems that can last. You feel the closeness of it now, as if life is leaning forward from the edge of its long sleep, listening, wondering if it is time to wake. In one corner of the pool, a bubble divides. Not dramatically, not evenly, but it splits, and each half holds some of what was inside. If what was happening in one could continue in two, then it is not only persistence, it is inheritance. Not yet genetics, not yet life, but something that moves across time through replication, and in that fragile continuity, something important begins. You float higher now, slowly, gently, letting the scene grow smaller beneath you, a single warm pool, rich with invisible movement, resting on a volcanic land beneath a quiet sky. Around it, others like it, scattered across the planet. Billions of chances, billions of bubbles, each one a test, a trial, a story just beginning. Some will vanish, some will build, and somewhere, one will take a step so small, it is almost nothing. A step from chemistry into biology. You do not know which pool it will be. Perhaps none, perhaps many, but the shift is coming. The shift from structures that form to structures that do, from molecules that react to molecules that need. You feel it in the rhythm of the pools, in the breath of the planet, in the quiet persistence of tiny compartments holding fast against the current. And as you let your breath slow and your body soften into sleep, you wonder what happens when these bubbles begin to hunger, when what's inside wants more than to exist, when the chemistry begins to crave fuel, to process, to survive. The pool is still warm beneath you, its surface rippling gently in the morning light of a world without flowers, without wings, without thought. Beneath that surface, inside the smallest of bubbles, soft-walled protocells drifting lazily through water molecules are beginning to do something strange. Not just to exist, not just to bump and bind, but to behave. You sense it before you see it. A quiet order among the chaos, a rhythm within the reaction, like a whisper threading its way through a crowded room. And there, nestled among the fragments of carbon and hydrogen and phosphate, a molecule begins to take shape, long and winding, yet delicate, like a ribbon folded into meaning. It is called RNA, though names do not exist yet, and in this early world, it is not a noun but a movement. You drift closer, letting your thoughts hover around this slender structure, and you notice something beautiful. It folds, not randomly, not like a crumpled string, but in patterns. Each twist and turn matters. Parts of it loop back and pair with other parts, forming hairpins and helices, pockets and stems. It folds like origami, precise and soft, shaped not by fingers, but by forces, the subtle magnetism of base pairs, the dance of charge and curve. These folds are not for decoration. They give the molecule new abilities. Some folds allow it to stick to other molecules, to guide them. Some let it help other reactions happen faster, more efficiently. One strand acts like a mold, another like a matchmaker. It is not just a carrier of instructions, it is also a tool, a catalyst, a guide. You begin to sense the uniqueness of this molecule, how it straddles two worlds. DNA, in the distant future, will become the long-term library, the keeper of permanent blueprints. But RNA, here and now, is something more nimble, more active. It remembers, and it does. It copies and it shapes. It acts, You watch one strand float gently inside a protocell's watery pocket, where the ingredients for life's next steps swirl close by. It binds with certain molecules, but not others. It folds in ways that allow a reaction to happen more easily. You begin to understand that RNA is not just responding to the environment, it is influencing it. A soft conductor, coaxing music from the hum of chemistry. The sequence of its bases adenine, uracil, cytosine, guanine is like a simple code, not in symbols, but in interactions. One part attracts another, forming bonds like whispered agreements. In time, one strand may serve as a template, allowing its sequence to be copied. This is not perfection. The copies are often flawed, incomplete, but still, a pattern repeats. A memory moves forward. You rest beside this tiny system and feel its persistence. You know that it has no mind, no purpose in the way you understand it. And yet its structure lets it hold information, lets it shape what happens around it. That is not consciousness, but it is control. It is choice shaped by chemistry. Some strands of RNA are short, looping like bracelets. Others stretch longer, like winding roads with many bends. Some catalyze single reactions, others coordinate multiple steps. And inside the protocell, this soft, coiling geometry begins to matter. One RNA strand holds the ingredients for a reaction, while another brings in the energy. Together, they help build something new. Sometimes that new thing is another RNA strand. Sometimes it is part of a membrane. Sometimes it is a helper molecule, a coenzyme, a peptide. A step toward protein. You begin to see how RNA becomes a bridge, not just between molecules, but between chemistry and life. It is both memory and method, both archive and actor. A molecule that remembers how it folded and uses that fold to fold the world. Not every strand survives. Most unravel, break, or lose their function. But those that can copy themselves even poorly leave behind echoes, and the ones that fold in useful ways are more likely to be copied again. Not by desire, but by outcome, not by intelligence, but by inheritance. Evolution begins not with bodies or thoughts, but with molecules that persist, molecules that fold in ways that matter. You drift through the dreaming pools again, watching as protocells float, merge, divide. Inside them, RNA strands shuffle and shift, searching for stability. The ones that stay folded longer begin to shape what happens next. Over generations of chemistry, not years, but cycles, some protocells become better at holding RNA, some develop membranes that keep harmful ions out. Others absorb nutrients more effectively. You begin to see cooperation. RNA inside a protocell helps it grow. A larger protocell protects its RNA better. Together, they begin to blur the line between mere chemistry and early life. You feel it now, how the fold of a molecule becomes the shape of a system, how a strand of RNA, soft and quiet, begins to write the first songs of life. Not with sound, but with structure, not with intention, but with outcome. You imagine, for a moment, a world without RNA, and everything feels still, flat, suspended and waiting. But with RNA, the water ripples with purpose. Reactions begin to sequence. Cycles begin to sustain. The protocells are not alive in any full sense. They cannot reproduce entirely, cannot evolve rapidly, but they are closer, and inside them, the RNA hums like a quiet melody, echoing across generations of molecules, shaping each pool's rhythm. You rise slowly, lifting from the pool, letting the world of folded strands and flexible skins grow smaller below you. The earth is still young, but no longer silent. The chemistry has found its conductor. The orchestra is not yet in tune, not yet rehearsed, but the first notes have been played, and you wonder now, as your thoughts begin to drift toward stillness, What happens when these strands, once so soft and alone, meet new partners, new structures, and new possibilities? What happens when RNA meets something that can help it hold on longer, something sturdier, something that can do more than fold? The Earth is quieter now, though not still, and as you drift over its surface, you feel a subtle shift, not in the heat or the storms or the tides, but in something softer, deeper, more deliberate. Beneath you, the pools still shimmer in the sunlight, warmed by volcanic breath, stirred by wind, thick with the ingredients of early life. But something has changed within them. Where before, chemistry flowed like a wild current, now it begins to swirl in circles. Soft loops of repetition, of reaction, of return, and floating at the edges of these pools, nestled into crevices and droplets, are tiny bubbles so small you cannot see them, yet so full of potential. You feel their presence like stars behind clouds. These are protocells, little spheres of fat molecules forming spontaneous boundaries, soft walls that separate inside from outside. You lower yourself slowly, watching one of these bubbles drift in the warmth of the water. Its surface is not hard, not rigid, but alive with motion. The molecules that make it up are always shifting, jostling, flowing, yet still holding together. It is a dance of cohesion without confinement, flexibility with form. Inside this bubble, a world unfolds. The water it holds is not empty. It carries fragments of memory, strands of RNA, chains of simple sugars, bits of protein-like peptides. These fragments have wandered here, caught by chance, pulled in through the porous membrane, and now they mingle, enclosed and protected. You float closer to one protocell and sense the gentle stirrings within it. Molecules interact not with desperation, but with rhythm. Some reactions begin to feed into each other, forming cycles not perfect, but persistent. One molecule breaks another down, releasing energy, which fuels a different reaction, which produces a piece that feeds the first again. These are not yet systems of life, but they echo life's music, loops of logic, flows of function, where outputs become inputs in soft succession. You drift among these protocells, thousands of them rising and sinking in the pools like bubbles in a simmering pot. Each one carries a slightly different recipe, a slightly different combination of contents. Most do nothing. Some survive for only minutes before popping, spilling their chemistry back into the soup. But a few, just a few, manage to hold on, to maintain a rhythm, to keep the reactions going a little longer. These bubbles, like tiny experiments, test the boundaries of possibility. Inside them, the molecules are not just reacting, they are beginning to organize. One protocell, drifting near a patch of warm clay, absorbs a piece of RNA that folds into a helpful shape. That strand speeds up a reaction that produces more of another molecule, which in turn stabilizes the membrane. Now, the bubble holds itself together longer. This is not intelligence. This is feedback, a gentle loop. You feel the shift. This bubble is no longer just a container. It is a participant. It is not alive, but it acts as if it wants to be. Its shape makes its chemistry more likely to continue. And when it divides, because yes, it does, the two new bubbles each carry some of what was inside. It is not perfect inheritance, but it is enough. Somewhere else in the pool, another protocell develops a membrane more resistant to outside ions, keeping the internal reactions undisturbed. Another accidentally absorbs a molecule that fuels a new pathway, an energy carrier, a primitive battery. Now, that protocell cycles faster. The more it cycles, the more it grows. And when it grows large enough, it splits not with purpose, but with pattern. These small beginnings are fragile, inconsistent, but they are real. You drift along the surface, carried by a breeze that brushes across the pools, and look down upon this field of bubbles. It is a sea of becoming not yet life, but rehearsing it. Not yet cells, but rehearsing self. The membranes are what make the difference. A membrane is not just a wall, it is a decision. It decides what comes in, what stays out, what is held close. In modern cells, membranes are full of proteins and channels and sensors. But here, in the ancient pools, they are only simple films of fatty molecules, and yet already, they shape fate. A protocell with the right membrane holds its chemistry longer. It shelters reactions. It concentrates effort. It keeps helpful molecules near and harmful ones away. You begin to see how structure becomes function, not because anyone designed it to be so, but because the ones that hold function stay, and the ones that don't dissolve. You pass by a group of protocells that have clustered together on a patch of mineral surface. Their proximity allows for small exchanges. When one breaks apart, its contents may enter another. In this slow swapping, helpful combinations spread, and now, the pool is not just full of individual trials, but a community of experiments, a network of tiny, trembling possibilities. Echoing across time and space, you float gently back into the center of one pool and rest beside a protocell that has just divided. Its daughter bubbles are smaller, but still carry enough to continue the cycle, enough to start again. And this, you realize, is the heart of life's first whisper. Not perfection, not control, but continuation. The ability to keep going, to hold together, just long enough for a pattern to pass on. You feel it now. The softness of becoming. Life does not begin with a spark or a scream, but with a bubble that refuses to pop, with a loop that completes just once more, with a membrane that holds. These protocells are not conscious. They are not aware of time or of death, but they are beginning to persist. And in their persistence, they are teaching chemistry how to act like life. As you rise gently above the pool, the earth hums beneath you, its surface still shifting, its air still thick, its skies still open. But below, in the warm water, a transformation is underway. Molecules no longer drift without consequence. Some are held, some are used, some are passed on. And inside these thin, shimmering walls, you see the beginning of systems that can feed, respond, change. And soon, perhaps very soon, they will do more. They will begin to sense what they need. They will begin to take in fuel, and somewhere, in the quiet center of one bubble's rhythm, a hunger will be born. The bubbles still drift beneath you, delicate spheres of possibility swaying gently in the warmth of ancient pools. But something has shifted within them. Not in form, but in function. You float low over one such protocell now, small and shimmering, its membrane a fragile boundary between the chaos outside and the order beginning to take shape inside. This bubble is no longer just a container. It is beginning to act, not wildly, not consciously, but in ways that feel deliberate, even if they are not. Inside, molecules flow in a rhythm that is no longer random. Reactions repeat, build upon one another, feed into new ones. Energy is no longer just present, it is needed. You feel this need, a gentle pull like thirst, like a plant, leaning toward light. For the first time, the bubble does not simply hold energy, it seeks it. You are witnessing the earliest trace of metabolism, the set of reactions that fuel a living thing, that allow it to grow, to repair, to persist. But here, at the dawn of hunger, the process is simple, almost shy. A few molecules slip through the membrane, diffuse inward. Some are broken down, releasing tiny sparks of energy. That energy fuels another reaction, and so on. Each step prepares the next. You watch closely as one protocell drifts near a mineral surface, absorbing a molecule that reacts immediately. breaking apart in a way that releases heat. That heat stirs the inner chemistry, increases the rate of another reaction, which in turn helps produce a small molecule that stabilizes the membrane itself. It is not a mind, not a plan, but it is a loop that favors staying. You notice, now, that bubbles without this process dissolve more easily. They drift aimlessly, and then fall apart, but the ones that begin to process fuel, even in the simplest way, persist longer. The chemistry inside is no longer just surviving by accident. It is sustaining itself through action. In this way, hunger is born not with a mouth or a craving, but with a quiet need to continue. You feel it in the way the protocell orients toward molecules it can use. There is no seeking, not yet, but there is selection, a preference for what fuels the cycle. And slowly, over time, protocells that process fuel better become more likely to divide, to pass on parts of their structure, their chemistry, their rhythm. This is not yet biology, but it is the edge of it. You float deeper into the pool, watching protocells with simple metabolic networks unfold inside them. Some reactions use heat, others use light. In shallow areas, protocells near the surface begin to absorb photons, particles of sunlight, and those photons stir molecules into action. A pigment, simple and crude, catches light and holds it long enough to push a reaction forward. It is photosynthesis in its earliest form, not yet oxygen-producing, not yet world-changing, but a whisper of what's to come. You drift near a protocell that captures chemical gradients, tiny differences in charge or concentration between the inside and the outside. These gradients become a kind of battery. Ions move across the membrane, and their movement does work. It's called chemiosmosis, though that word has not yet been spoken. And in this moment, it is simply another way the bubble holds on to energy, uses it, transfers it. You see now how hunger becomes more than a condition. It becomes a function, a way of being. The protocell does not think, but its chemistry favors what feeds it. And what feeds it stays. Molecules that bring energy become part of the membrane, part of the internal cycles. They are not just passing through, they are being used. You begin to understand how selection emerges, not through decision, but through endurance. Those that use energy better survive longer. Those that survive longer pass on their structures. And those structures, little by little, begin to improve. This is evolution at its quietest, not the drama of competition, but the poetry of persistence. Hunger, in this way, becomes the first measure of success. You feel the elegance of it now, how even the simplest bubble can teach matter to care, not in the emotional sense, but in the chemical one. To care is to conserve, to favor, to keep, and hunger gives rise to keeping, to reaching, to continuing. You watch as one protocell takes in a molecule that cannot be used. It floats inside. Inert, it adds nothing. And eventually, the protocell falters. Another, by contrast, absorbs a different molecule. This one reacts easily, sparks a chain of energy, and that energy fuels a second process, which repairs a damaged strand of RNA inside. That protocell survives. That one divides. A pattern is born, not in the sense of rules, but in the soft bend of probability. In this way, hunger begins to shape the very architecture of protocells. Membranes develop subtle differences, some more porous, some more selective. Channels begin to form, small gaps that allow certain ions to pass. These are not yet proteins, not complex gates, but their presence changes what gets in. And how often the bubble learns, through structure alone, to prefer what helps it stay. You float above the pool now, watching these tiny bubbles divide and drift, each one a cradle for chemistry that feeds itself, repairs itself, continues. Their hunger is not dramatic. It is not pain or craving. It is continuity. It is the gentle preference for what fuels their unfolding. In this hunger, the protocell becomes something more. It is no longer just a product of its environment, it is participating in it, interacting with it, shaping it, however slightly. The chemistry inside responds to the chemistry outside, and in that response, the first shadow of behavior is cast. You wonder now what happens next. If hunger can shape structure, and structure can shape persistence, could structure also shape memory? Could these protocells begin to carry not only reactions, but instructions, not only hunger, but heredity? The pool beneath you ripples gently, warmed by the ancient earth and lit by a patient sun. And within its shallows, the soft stirrings of metabolism continue their quiet rhythm. But something new is weaving itself into this calm, not just the flow of energy, but the echo of identity. You drift slowly over a cluster of protocells, their membranes shimmering like soap bubbles in light. And inside these fragile spheres, the loops and strands of RNA still fold, still react, still catalyze. But now they begin to do something more. They begin to copy. Not perfectly, not often, but enough. One strand unzips. Its bases: adenine, uracil, cytosine, guanine, pulling gently apart like the pages of a well-read book. Floating nearby are free-floating bases, scattered and waiting. One by one, they find their partners, A with U, C with G, matching like notes in a familiar song. As each new strand forms, it mirrors the original, not by sight or intention, but by shape, by affinity, by the quiet tug of chemistry. This is replication. And with it comes something new. Heredity, the passing on of information, not through memory as you know it, but through structure. You hover beside one protocell, small and steady, and inside it, a copied strand curls into place. This strand can do what the original did. It can catalyze reactions. It can help build molecules. It can contribute to the protocell's survival. And when the protocell grows and divides, one copy drifts into each daughter. Now the daughters share not just contents, but instructions. They remember, chemically, what they are. You feel the elegance of it, how structure becomes legacy, how folding becomes function, how function becomes survival. The copies are not always perfect. Sometimes a base pairs incorrectly. Sometimes a strand folds in a new way. Sometimes a reaction slows, or quickens, or stops altogether. But these errors are not always losses. Some mistakes producing no change. Others are harmful. But every now and then, a small shift makes the protocell more stable, more efficient, more likely to stay. And so error becomes variation. Variation becomes opportunity. You are watching evolution now, not through limbs or feathers or eyes, but through strands of RNA, reshaped slightly by time. Each cycle of replication, each division of a protocell, carries the chance for a new song to emerge, a new fold, a new function, a new way to continue. The earth continues its slow turning, and the pools continue their gentle breathing. Within them, protocells come and go, most vanishing into silence, but some remaining, some dividing, some whispering their structures into the future. You float higher and see the patterns repeating, not in perfect circles, but in spirals that expand gently outward, each loop carrying a hint of the one before. This is memory. At its most elemental, not memory of places or feelings, but of form, of function, of pattern. It is the memory that allows one protocell to resemble another, not because it was told to, but because it inherited the tools to do so. You follow a single protocell as it grows larger, its inner chemistry thriving. It carries strands of RNA that fold just right, that catalyze essential reactions, that stabilize its membrane. When it divides, those strands are copied and passed on. The daughters begin with an advantage, not a guarantee, but a head start. This is the beginning of lineage, of generations, of a past that shapes a present. You begin to feel the comfort in that continuity. How something so small can hold on through time. How molecules remember without knowing. How structure becomes story. The protocells that survive longest are the ones whose RNA replicates reliably, folds usefully, passes on gracefully. These are the quiet winners in this world of whispers. You float through one pool, then another, and you begin to notice diversity. No longer are all protocells the same. Some replicate faster, some are better at absorbing nutrients, some withstand heat, others divide more slowly, but live longer. The population begins to branch, to bloom, to differentiate. Not dramatically, not loudly, but enough. Each protocell now carries a slightly different version of the past, a different blend of memory and mistake. And in that difference lies the power of adaptation. The environment shifts, a storm passes, the temperature dips, a new molecule appears, and some protocells handle it better than others. Those that do survive, they pass on their chemistry, their instructions, their quiet successes. You float beside one such protocell now, still small, still simple, but with a strand of RNA that helps it use a new kind of sugar as fuel. It survives where others falter, and its descendants, too, carry that secret. A gift from one replication error, one gentle shift in structure. And so, the song changes not all at once, but note by note. You begin to understand how life does not emerge from a single moment, but from thousands of near misses, from the ones that hold just long enough to try again. Heredity gives persistence a voice. It allows protocells to learn without thinking, to grow without understanding. It builds the past into the present, one fold at a time. And it lays the foundation for something even more powerful, for a system that not only remembers, but refines. You hover once more above the pool and see the story unfolding below. Bubbles divide, strands copy, patterns echo across time. And through it all, the chemistry sings a soft chorus of structure, function, inheritance, the whisper of instructions carried from one tiny world to the next. And you begin to wonder, as the surface stills beneath you, what happens when these whispers become networks, when strands of RNA begin to work together, to collaborate, to code not just for survival, but for construction. What might form when memory becomes machinery? The earth beneath you is still warm, still wild, but softer now, not in its geology, but in its story. You float above ancient pools that shimmer beneath the sun, and though they appear as they always have, calm, mineral rich, open to the sky, something new stirs within them, something branching, something becoming. The protocells below, once simple bubbles with simple contents, are now varied, each one slightly different from the others, shaped not by intention, but by time and persistence. You drift slowly through their quiet congregation, and as you do, you sense the start of a deeper rhythm. Replication still hums, metabolism still churns, but now, from one protocell, there come two, and from two, many more not perfect copies, but iterations. Every strand of RNA, every folded peptide, every membrane is passed forward with subtle changes, tiny variations whispered from one generation to the next. And those variations begin to matter. In one protocell, a fold that helps it use light more efficiently. In another, a mutation that allows it to tolerate a saltier environment. Some of these changes are silent, some are helpful, some lead nowhere, but all of them contribute to a widening field of difference. You begin to see what has always been true in nature, that sameness can survive, But difference allows for discovery. These protocells, though they do not know it, are beginning to explore, not with feet, or fins, or flight, but with form, with chemistry that stretches into possibility. One bubble develops a stronger membrane, better able to resist bursts of heat from below. Another produces a molecule that neutralizes harmful ions. A third stumbles into a new reaction, one that creates a surplus of energy. It is a quiet bloom, not of flowers, but of forms. Life, even at this molecular stage, is finding different ways to continue. You drift beside a small cluster of protocells clinging to a rock near the edge of a volcanic vent. They are bathed in warmth and minerals, and their chemistry has adapted to that intensity. They divide quickly, but they do not last long. Still, their rapid cycles allow for faster experimentation, more mutations, more chances, just meters away. In cooler, quieter waters, a different community thrives more slowly. These protocells divide less often, but their structures are sturdier, their membranes more selective, and you realize that even this small pool now holds niches, separate conditions favoring separate strengths. Life, though still microscopic, has begun to specialize. You rise slightly and let your gaze pass across a landscape of pools. Each one is a little world, a little laboratory of variation. In one pool, protocells depend on sunlight. In another, they rely on chemical gradients. Some float freely, others anchored to clay. Each condition nudges evolution in a different direction. You begin to feel the elegance of this branching, how simple repetition, paired with imperfection, leads to diversity. There is no plan. There is only chance, pressure, and time, but from those, complexity unfolds. You picture the growing tree, not a tree with roots and leaves, but a tree of lineages, of genetic echoes, of molecular decisions, passed onward. Every time a protocell divides, it chooses again what to become, and each choice is shaped by what has come before. Some lineages vanish quickly. They try and fall silent. Others endure, and their chemistry deepens, becomes more layered, more precise. A few begin to combine RNA with peptides, short chains of amino acids. These simple proteins begin to assist with tasks, stabilizing strands, strengthening membranes, enhancing reactions. Now, function begins to be shared among parts. Now, cooperation begins within the cell. You hover beside one such protocell. Its interior, more intricate than any before. Its RNA no longer acts alone. Peptides guide it, support it. The division of labor is beginning, and this, too, increases the chance of survival. You feel how life is learning to distribute its work, to protect its function with layers. This protocell does not last forever, but it divides, and its descendants carry this internal team forward. You move gently through time. Days and nights pass. Pools dry and fill again. Generations rise and fall in silence. And yet, pattern persists. Diversity increases. Some protocells now have internal compartments. Some are beginning to regulate their internal pH. Others can sense changes in their surroundings not with senses, but with molecular switches that trigger reactions. Life is becoming more responsive, more aware. You float farther, to a pool you have not seen before. And there, you find something surprising. Two protocells have fused. Their membranes have joined, and their contents swirl together. This moment is rare, and often destructive. Most fused cells break apart or fail to function. But here, the fusion works. Two different genetic systems combine, and a new chemistry emerges. A hybrid, a blend. This new cell begins to divide, and its children inherit the combined traits, a metabolism from one, a stable membrane from the other. You watch this new lineage bloom. In this moment, you glimpse one of evolution's most powerful tools. Recombination. From union comes novelty. From novelty, new pathways. Not just mutations now, but mergers. This, too, is part of life's exploration. The willingness to blend, to change course, to take the risk of becoming something unfamiliar. You begin to notice that some lineages now dominate their pools, not through destruction, but through stability. Their instructions replicate with more fidelity. Their chemistry is more robust. They resist the tides, the salt, the heat, but even within those lineages, variation continues. You see branches within branches, pathways diverging. The tree grows ever more complex. You feel how this blooming is not just outward, it is inward too. Life is learning to organize itself from within, to coordinate reactions, to maintain balance, to use its parts more efficiently. It is beginning to innovate. You float back into the center of this ancient world, surrounded by invisible lives, whose ancestors now number in the millions. You see the full sweep of change, the progression from one to many, from simple to layered, from fragile to persistent, and yet there is no end. Diversity does not conclude. It expands, because each new form opens the door to more forms. Each new function makes room for another. This is life's quiet genius. It does not need to know where it's going. It only needs to keep going. And in going, it grows. You take a deep breath, feeling the stillness of this moment, the immensity of time stretching behind and before you, and you begin to wonder if life can explore in so many ways. Can it also reflect? Can it hold not just memory, not just difference, but meaning? When will these branching forms begin to feel, to sense, to know? The earth turns beneath you slowly. The same earth, and yet not the same, because billions of years have passed since the first soft bubble cradled the breath of metabolism, since a strand of RNA folded into function, since a protocell, warmed by volcanic light, whispered itself into the future, through replication and hunger and chance. You float now through the quiet night of the modern world, but the waters below still remember, still hold the salt, the minerals, the ancient rhythm of tides that once rocked the cradle of the first cells, and you, gently breathing in this stillness, carry the echo of that beginning in your very body. Your blood flows with salts not unlike those in the earliest oceans. Your cells, each one of them, hold membranes that still reflect the soft, flexible geometry of those ancient bubbles. You are not apart from the first life, you are its continuation. The chemistry has become complex, the structure refined, the shapes beautiful and intricate, but the rules are still the same. Inside you, the rhythm of life plays on, looping in cycles that began when Earth was still new. You pause and listen inward. In your chest, your heart pulses not just with blood, but with inheritance, a quiet thump shaped by ion gradients, chemical exchanges across membranes, proteins that fold and unfold, like the soft origami of early enzymes. In every beat, there is history. In every breath, a memory older than language. The genes in your cells, the DNA spiraled and tucked away in each nucleus, are stories written in an alphabet that dates back to that primordial world. Adenine, thymine, cytosine, guanine. The same bases, the same bonds, the same script passed down in countless variations through the vast, branching tree of life. You carry the instructions not only for your body, but for your ancestors, for creatures that swam, that crawled, that walked, but before all of them, you carry the instructions from molecules that learn to fold, to feed, to replicate. Their legacy is written into the very blueprint of you. You feel the breath rise and fall in your lungs. Oxygen enters, carbon dioxide leaves. This, too, is an echo respiration, metabolism, A dance of energy exchange that began long ago when early life learned to take fuel and turn it into motion, into warmth, into survival. Your mitochondria, the tiny powerhouses in your cells, are distant descendants of ancient symbiotic organisms. They once lived freely, like bacteria, and now they live in you, passed on from mother to child, generation after generation, whispering energy into every cell. Even in sleep, they continue, remembering what they were and what they became. You move your fingers, or perhaps you simply imagine doing so, and even in that thought, there is chemistry older than bones. Proteins unfold and refold to signal movement. Ions shift across membranes. Your nerves fire using the same charged gradients that the earliest protocells used to gather energy. The complexity is vast now. Yes, but the foundation is humble. A bubble, a spark, a fold, all of it still lives in you. You trace your thoughts back through time, not just through your own years, but through generations, not of people, but of cells, of molecules, of mechanisms refined slowly, patiently, beautifully. You are made not only of matter, but of process. The processes that allowed life to survive, to adapt, to persist. You carry the results of exploration, of branching, of variation. You are the child of those that continued. And still, even now, the process continues. Every time a cell divides in your body, the old instructions are copied just as they were in ancient pools of water. Errors still happen. Some are caught. Some slip through. This is the quiet background of evolution, still unfolding within you. You are not finished. No living thing is. Life is still writing, still editing, still exploring what else might be possible. You think of all the organisms around you: trees, birds, microbes, whales. All of them different, all of them alike, all of them built from the same building blocks, the same elements, the same ancient chemistry. Some live in heat, some in cold, some live in air, some in water, some glow, some think, some drift, some dream. And yet, at the molecular level, they all speak the same ancestral language. Life has bloomed in every direction, yet never let go of its roots. The instructions may vary, but the code is familiar. You rest in this truth. You are not alone in the universe of biology. You are part of a great unfolding, a branching story of what can happen when matter is warmed by time and stirred by energy. From oceans to organs, from molecules to minds, you are the echo. You feel it even in your dreams, the way your brain weaves memory and meaning, powered by signals that travel along circuits evolved from ancient needs. The way your immune system, in its silent watchfulness, remembers threats, defends you, adapts. All of it arises from the logic of persistence, the logic of life that began in a pool, in a bubble, in a strand. You are not merely living, you are continuing. You are contributing to a lineage that stretches backward into darkness and forward into possibility. Every laugh, every tear, every breath is a new note in the ancient symphony of living things. And still, as the night deepens around you, another question begins to form. If you are the echo of what came before, what echoes will come after? What whispers will your own life leave behind in others, in memory, in the chemistry of your descendants? What does it mean to carry life forward, not only in cells, but in care, in thought, in wonder? You drift through the quiet now, knowing that your body, your breath, your being is built upon countless unseen choices, ancient reactions, molecules that dared to persist. And as you begin to let go into sleep, wrapped in this slow revelation, you sense that life so old, so fragile, so endlessly brave is still dreaming.